not know what the previous speakers were going to talk about. So my title, Ambition versus Reality, was not based on what we just heard. There was a lot of ambition in what we just heard. A lot. I don't know. We'll get to that at the panel discussion, I think. Anyway, this is reality. We have a big problem. We were very ambitious, Paris Agreement, big gap, falling short across the globe. That's the reality. This is also reality. These are the mentions in large corporate presentations of the words ESG, electrification, energy transition, and decarbonization. And this shows you, that large corporations, governments are talking less about these topics in the last 5 years. This is not since Trump. This is in the last 5 years. This is even with the IRA and the infrastructure bill and everything that the Biden administration put in place. Everything that's going on in Europe, everything that's going on around COP, etc. We're talking less about these topics in the last 5 years, which is just interesting. So the question is, are we losing momentum? I'm a pretty bullish person, but there's a lot of projects that are being canceled right now. Here's a list. This is only of the I think I took the last 5-6 days or something like that. 8 days actually, 14. Sorry. A lot of wind projects are being canceled. A lot of hydrogen projects are being canceled. Even solar. The large oil and gas companies pulling back from investments in renewables, going back to their core oil and gas businesses. It's not a pretty picture. It's pretty depressing if you think about the gap on the first slide and what's happening with these large projects that are intended to make that gap smaller to address the climate crisis that we have. So with all that being said, is the energy transition still here? Do we still have momentum? Yes or no? I think the energy transition is here, but it's just becoming harder and harder. And we need to be really, really realistic about what's going on. The good news is that demand overall is increasing across the globe and in Curaçao as well, which was just presented. In the US and in Europe, hyperscalers, AI data centers, industrial electrification, and also electrification of transportation. So there is a significant demand growth across the globe pretty much. That's good. The other good thing is that the cost of new technologies continue to decline long term. We had some hiccups in the last couple of years, some issues with supply chain, materials coming out of, equipment coming out of US, etc., out of China, etc. But long term, these technologies will become cheaper and cheaper. As we've seen with wind, as we've seen with solar, we're seeing it with batteries, we'll see it with all these technologies, that they will become cheaper. I think my predecessor spoke about the Trump administration. I have a little bit of a different perspective there. But in general, despite the new US administration, Trump, which is really putting the screws on renewables and energy transition and moving back to not only oil and gas, but even coal. He had an announcement on coal the other day, if you guys have followed that. But there's still a lot of pushback at the state and local level. Energy policies are not being made at the federal level in the US. They're being made at the state level for a big part. But he will go after it as well. So it will be an interesting fight between federal and states that are still very progressive, that want to invest in renewable energy and in the energy transition, or more conservative states that already have a lot of industry and manufacturing around renewables as well. That's the interesting debate between the Democrats and the Republicans right now, because the biggest manufacturing facilities is actually in the red states, in the Republican states. So if Trump, puts the screws on that, it will hurt him in his own states, if you will. I was, not 100% excited to put this under good, because it's not a good thing. I've spoken so much over the last 10 years about these natural disasters and the impacts of climate change. And I can show you hundreds of graphs around that. We just need more of that, because that's when really people wake up. And we'll see more of that. On average, in the US, like 20 years ago, we had 5 major events of $1 billion or more, $100 billion or more damage. Now we have like 14 or 15. So tripled the number of big events, winter storms, hurricane, floods, wildfires, here you go. And to be honest, I think that's the only way you will get the public buy-in in this. And it's going to happen, and we're going to have to face with it, deal with it. We're going to need to make our grid more resilient. And I think Curaçao, we always talk about that we're outside the hurricane zone. I'm not sure how long that will be the case. So that's an interesting thing to think about. I don't know the answer. This one is for Leo. I put it there. Interest rates will come down, unfortunately. It will happen in the next 12 to 18 months that we'll see interest rates coming down. In the US and Europe, there's too much pressure on it. We have an economic recession around the corner, so interest rates will come down, which is favorable. That's good news. The bad news is that the easier, between quotes, transition projects have been implemented. Low-hanging fruit has been exhausted. And we're dealing now with really hard to decarbonize parts of our economy, which is buildings, transportation to some degree, and industry, and some agriculture as well. So that's the challenge that we're up. Renewable supply chain challenges and costs have increased. Probably will be temporarily, but they're still pretty high at this moment, so that doesn't help. And then the newer technologies, and some of my co-speakers spoke about that, they are just really high risk. And we should really think about that properly before you start investing more than the whatever 10 million that we've invested so far. These projects are complicated and tricky. And on paper, in feasibility studies, they look good, but things change. And then all of a sudden, you're sitting with a big investment and things go south. The real ugly part is the enormous geopolitical shift that we will see. And this is the glass of bowl. My perspective, but what's going to happen with Trump is not putting these tariffs in place to make money out of tariffs. Trump is putting these tariffs in place to make big shifts on the geopolitical front globally between China and Europe, including Europe. Europe is in a really bad place. Their energy dependency is through the roof. They have no way out. They can't build renewables fast enough, and they will continue to depend on others. And Trump wants to be one of those. So Trump wants to export a lot more energy to Europe and make Europe, energy dependent of the US. That's what's going on. China, he wants to isolate China as well, and that will be an interesting play there as well. But there will be some really big shifts. And Europe is going to be squeezed. And I don't know how long Europe can actually pay for the energy transition and all their sustainability goals. I think soon, and I think we're seeing some of the signals coming back from Europe that, hey, this is too costly. We have not a clear path out of this situation that we're in. And I'll be honest, I don't know how they're going to solve it. It would be an interesting discussion for the panel. The other thing that Trump is doing, and this is really scary, a lot of projects and initiatives depend on international collaboration, organizations. Even the project that you spoke about, it's tricky. Those organizations are falling apart, and that's also Trump doing that. The nationalism that we see now at the global scale, where everybody thinks only about himself or herself or their own country, their own region, is scary. This one really scares me, and it's going to, I think, impact a lot of the projects and initiatives around the world. And then interest rates right now are high, so it's not really favorable to invest right now, but they will come down in the next 12 to 18 months. ChatGPT, my son put it in there for me. This is what ChatGPT says about the challenges in Curaçao. Literally, you can go check it yourself, but this is what they say about Curaçao. High dependence on fossil fuels, we heard about that. Upfront cost and limited financing. Grid reliability and storage, spoke about that. Vulnerability to climate events. To a lesser degree, but maybe not totally out of the picture if you look 10, 20 years from now. Pretty good. And then lack of technical expertise, definitely a challenge. Policy and regulatory gaps was spoken about. Regional coordination challenges. didn't understand that one well. Underutilized renewable potential and socio-economic dependence on oil. It's amazing what ChatGPT comes up with. Pretty damn good. Ambition, Curaçao versus reality. I took this from the TNO report. I'm not a big fan of TNO, but you know, it's the best I could find. There's not a lot of good studies on what's happening in Curaçao, but nevertheless, going from 30%, I think, to like 100%, where the purple part is extremely difficult to achieve. But further increase of demand driven by tourism and population growth and electrification of transportation. Madam Yesenia spoke about this at length. Totally agree with that. Although the build out of the infrastructure is really key, and it could really hinder adaptation of electric vehicles if we don't get the infrastructure right. Economies of scale has been always an issue for islands and for Curaçao specifically. It is just really hard to do this in a small economy and then on an island. And Curaçao is not alone. There's many that are in the same boat. High interest rates don't help. Renewable supply chain challenges, spoke about that. But again, being on an island makes this just a little bit harder. This is an important one. We have not spoken about it, but maybe during the panel we will. Intermittent renewables, so wind and solar, are very challenging to manage the load on the grid. And we need a lot of things, including storage, energy efficiency, advanced optimization, including more favorable feed-in tariffs and regulation to solve that. And I'll talk about energy cloud in a minute. That's a concept that we've developed probably 10 years ago, but that structurally changes the infrastructure for Curaçao, and it has to happen. Lack of knowledge, spoke about that, and then policies and regulations, and Madam Yesenia spoke about that as well.
It should be clean. So any unit we will start up, we will use propane as let's say, the source for startup. There already we reduce the SO2 emissions. But again, it's challenging. The energy demand is growing very fast, and you see the technology of, for instance, hydrogen and other technology to balance things, etc. We are still in developing them. So, but in general, I agree with what you have to say. We have a good picture of what the end result of the Trump actions will be. But he knows that better.
Thank you. I think, let me put it like so, there are two ways to approach this. From what we say, to make your country energy neutral, fossil neutral, and then you will go in Dutchland for duurzamen and only see how to produce and get there to be zero CO2 emissions. But our innovation is a little bit bigger. It's not only for producing for local consumption, but for export. And I believe that we have a strong partner in this, which is Holland in its totality, because if they succeed, it's not only us benefiting from it, but it's the whole make industry, maritime make industry from Holland, having a huge market to be able to export this new innovative technology. And you can choose two things: make your island green, and that means that we actually rely on tourism, or we'll go for a game changer together with a strong partner, which also is committing itself with not just word, but with means, in order to see what are the possibilities for this island.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah.
Because in the past, some recyclers have offered to dismantle the refinery for free as long as they can keep the metals and sell them. Are we going to start that with that anytime soon? Because
who had a plan?
Other recyclers. So there, in the time that Greentown was developed as an idea, recyclers offered to dismantle the entire refinery for free. So the question is it going to happen anytime soon? And why have we been waiting for 7 years to do this?
Thanks for the question. We are asked those questions regularly. As a matter of fact, a lot of you don't know, but we have restarted starting the dismantling parts of the refinery already, right? And it will take its time for repurposing, especially for repurposing the terrains for the other activities. It's not only a question of dismantling. The biggest money is in remediation, right? So we have a very, very dirty soil there with all sorts of zware metalen, crude, etc. That is hundreds and hundreds of millions for remediation. That's the challenge. So it will take time. You saw it also in our roadmap, remediation. That will take for sure 20, 25 years for us to, phase by phase do that and dismantling. Yeah. And if we dismantle, and we also believe in the hydrogen, the green fuel in the future, but then you will see that the old hydrocarbons units like the cat cracker and distillers, etc., will be substituted by electrolyzers and units who will produce green fuels. But it will take time and money.
Yes, but
I want to make one comment, by the way, because maybe people think that I'm not a hydrogen supporter. I am definitely a strong believer in hydrogen as part of the decarbonization globally. My team in Europe at that time with Navigant did the first initial studies. We put big consortia together. So I'm a big believer of it. But I'm also realistic in terms of timing. Timing is everything in this energy transition. What is the right time? Are you getting the demand? Are you getting the PPAs in place at the right price, et cetera, et cetera? So that's the risk. And I'm a little bit more skeptic right now because of the things that I'm seeing. Some of the hydrogen hubs that came out of the Biden Act are being dismantled right now. Some of the big hydrogen projects in Europe are being stopped. We just have to be careful. That's the only caveat there. Timing is everything, and having your demand there. But the technology itself is mature, it works, and it makes a lot of sense. Shipping is actually not that expensive, but that's a more detailed discussion.
okay. Other questions? Yeah, you had a question?
I have a question for Mr. John regarding the production of hydrogen. As we all know, the production of hydrogen requires lots of energy, and you want to get your energy from wind power. What is the reason that you want to put your wind farm in the North Sea, of course, instead of on the North Coast? In my opinion, it might be more, cost-wise, it is more convenient to put your wind farm on the coast, like we already have at Curaçao, at Norwa, and probably now at Curacao too. What is the reason that you want to have a floating wind farm?
There are two tracks. We are working also on another policy document based on what the stable enterprises are doing, and we will support them in that. And we are concentrating on developing solar farms and also wind farms along the coast, and even perhaps, I would say, in Buscabai, where we have the asphalt mill. So the only thing is we are limited on the land that's available. Therefore, I'm saying to get the ideal wind direction and so on. On the sea, for this project, I can tell you already, we are talking about 600 to 700 windmills of 15 megawatts, and the island can never carry that. On top of it, also you have other issues with the neighborhood. In Holland, there is a huge demonstration at this moment that nobody wants a windmill close, and Mr. Sofiarmans is saying, if I'm not mistaken, it should be 4 times the measurement of the height to their house, and they're saying it should be 8 times. So I don't think you're going to get environmental discussions on this issue, and we do have already this source. So why not? And the type of windmills that we're doing, it's something quite innovative. Let me take advantage to react to this. It is a huge ambition, but at the same time, I have to say, if we succeed, Curaçao will be put on the map much more further, and perhaps it's a dirty word to use, we will become richer. And up to now, we are only looking and surviving with tourism.
Sorry. Lady.
Regarding again to all four of you, I have a question for Mr. Vrins. I work with the Ministry of Urban Planning. Some challenges were mentioned. One of the challenges is also the mentality of the people. If I look at Aqualectra, the amount of illegal tapping of the electricity. Another challenge that was mentioned is the lack of policies. And for us, it's also difficult if we look at gas versus energy, because we're constantly dealing with the fire departments about the gas bombs. Should they be inside or outside? And minor discussions for big issues. Another challenge I consider is the fact that still the ministries on Curaçao work in pilots, in silos. And my question to Mr. Vrins would be, if you look at the energy cloud model, which parties should be involved to make it successful?
All of the above. What is interesting is that, and I live in Florida, Miami, and we only have one utility, Florida Power Line. I can only get my electricity from Florida Power Line. A lot of people ask me, we should, deregulate monopolies and break them down and have different parties like in the Netherlands or in Texas, for example. I'm not a big fan of unregulation and unregulated markets in this energy cloud model. And why is that? Because in this energy cloud model, if you have different organizations doing generation, transmission, distribution, and et cetera, and behind the meter generation and resources, there's going to be a lot of handles. So it's interesting that to think about deregulation and making the structures simple as we move to the energy cloud. So it's a little bit contradictory, but FPL, Florida Power Line, is executing this model really well. They have a lot of EV charging stations where they use capacity that's available, and customers don't pay for it. So I can pay $30 a month, and charge my EV as much as I want for a year. So my gasoline bill for my car is $30 a month. So there are some really interesting concepts, and it has nothing to do with how the market is structured and such. Energy cloud, who should be involved? Customers, businesses, of course, energy providers and utilities, and government. Across government, Curaçao is no different than any other government. I worked in Brazil, in Mexico, in the US, in the Netherlands, in Dubai. Every country has the same issues with government in terms of the silos and how do you bring them together. I have no idea how to solve that. That's not my area of expertise.
And it's Ramon and Jan. The projects Nancy is talking about, financing package, $500 million, more or less. That's something we can handle. The projects Patrick is talking about, I don't know exactly, 300 million, financeable. We have experience with that type of thing. The amounts Ramon is talking about, 10 billion a year, I think is what you said, 10 billion a year.
10 years.
That is, our friend from MCB left because he heard an amount and he went the moral of the story is that I know everybody knows that those amounts are not financeable locally, so you are thinking about international financing for sure. But I am just wondering and skeptical, and I'm a banker, so I can't help it. Are those amounts, even without the technical part, because that I cannot judge and other people can judge it, but
just to get billions upon billions of money to Curaçao. Do you think that's realistic? What do you think?
Of course I do, otherwise I won't get myself engaged in this project. When Shell established itself on the island, this question should also have been posed. So it isn't the government's on the land this one. The government is involved up to the pilot project. Just like on the mass reactor of this moment in Rotterdam, there are 3 huge hydrogen plants being built. 2 has been stopped, indeed, but Shell completed its hydrogen plant, and that's Shell. So after this pilot project, the government will step out, and we have to think about the Shell, the Nickel, Texaco, and so on. Vattenfall, you name it. So the government will not be involved, and I hope that you will be involved in the financing of those big corporations.
Yeah, this is a difficult question because it depends project by project what the appetite for financing is. A few things. This is a deep pocket game. Hydrogen is a deep pocket game. This is for governments and companies, and most of them are oil and gas companies that have deep, pockets, big balance sheets. If you can get them interested and on board and finance it, then you will be successful. We are seeing we've seen an overinflation of valuations of renewable energy projects, companies, technologies, overinflation in the last 5 years, and that's being corrected right now. Every single investor, and I work with them every day in the US, is readjusting their valuations of their projects, of their companies, of technologies. So there's a readjustment going on right now, and that creates some hesitance with private equity investors and funds in this space. I think it's temporary. I think we'll work through it, but it was just because everything was overinflated. For the last 5 years, everything was overinflated from a valuation perspective. We saw all these curves, going through the roof. And by the way, we've seen this afternoon that some of these curves are being adjusted and adjusted and adjusted. I'm not a big fan of TNO because they adjust their curves on an ongoing basis, and they never stop adjusting them. So that's going on. But if you have the right project and you have the right investors at the table, then I think you'll get the financing. I mean, there's a lot of capital out there, but investors have to become cautious.
Okay, Leo, if you permit me just add, we have 2 instructions, or I got 2 instructions from the private sector. One is to de-risk, de-risk, and de-risk. So we are trying everything we're doing to de-risk as much as possible. And the second thing, I didn't get it from him, but I got it as advice from Invest International. They are financing at this moment a huge project of windmill in Namibia. And they are instructing also providing capital and third-party financing as well. One thing that they give us advice is make sure your project is bankable. And what do they mean with it for you bankable? Meaning there are no hidden or things that are uncertain in the projects. That's why, for example, let me say something from some advisors, technical advisors, you don't need a line. But at the moment that the bank asks you, based on what did you design this windmill, based on what are those anchors that are designed, and you can answer it based on data that you have measured, then you are the problem. Yeah. The second thing I want to add is, we have very good connections with the big companies like Orsted, Vattenfall, you name it. But in Holland, we have a dilemma. On one side, those companies are pulling back and pausing their investment in the North Sea. But on the other hand, the government is claiming in Holland, we have a shortage of electricity in Holland. But the government will never say, we pull back our subsidies to these projects in comparison to China, where they're subsidizing everything.
Okay. Gentleman at the back.
More environmentally polluting. So the question will be for Acoleta, is Acoleta going to do anything about this extra pollution and trying to compensate it?
Of course we did. We built a wind park at Curaçao, which propelled us into 50% renewable energy penetration already. So yes, we balance the choice of going into less cleaner fuel oil. We countered it with increased renewable energy penetration. But like Mr. Vrins, like Mr. Vrins said, for an island like us, reliability and affordability should go first. And then with that transition, having a reduction of our CO2 as a result of it, that's the way to go for an island like us. We can go into green and go 100%, and because going into green energy at some point will increase if you don't do it, wisely, it can increase your tariffs because you have to maintain backup capacity and anyways. So you need to think about ways to reduce the tariffs, and that was one of the strategies we did, and countered it with the 50% renewable energy penetration increase from 30% to 50%, and going into 70% for anything soon. Yeah.
Okay, Rob?
I have a question on the solar energy. Last 2 weeks ago, Professor Roosman says, he visited the island, he's a transition professor. He said, well, in Holland they use more solar energy than in Curaçao. So my first question is why? And my second question is, those are individuals using solar energy. So if, for instance, 70% of the island will use solar energy, will use EVs, where is Ecoelectric? Do we still need those 600 million?
Very good question. The first question was the way Holland did it, and they went haywire, subsidizing, all solars and green. And where do they stand today with grid congestion? So I'm really, really happy that we did it on a controlled manner, and like I showed, the prices, the tariffs that are imposed for green energy are at all not prohibitive. In fact, they're really incentivizing more green. The narrative out there that the government or Ecoelectric is not incentivizing it is totally wrong. That's one. And the second thing would be, okay, what if all customers place solar on their roofs? We welcome it. In fact, we even say, if you put solar, please do it with batteries. Don't do it without batteries. That's what we're saying. Why? Because we don't want to keep capacity to run 6 hours at night, because it's not economically rendable. It's not something that is sound business to invest millions in plants and run them 6 hours a day, from 9 p.m. to maybe 3, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. So in fact, we welcome it. But the economic development that is going on, and the climate changes together with electrification, what we see is that the demand is growing so fast, and that the way we are constructing, there's no way. Just to give you an example, the towers that are being constructed at Parasasa, the way we're constructing now, and there are other hotels and other developments going on like that, even if they fill their complete rooftop with solar panels, they don't have enough capacity to provide that whole building with energy, let alone save it for the night. So you still have industrial and with the electrification going on, I think you will still need to some capacity an energy company. Yeah.
The role of the utility becomes even more critical, but it's a different role. It's an orchestration role. It's really orchestrating all the different components of the grid. Everything decentralized is not a cost-effective model. So it's going to be a combination of still some central station generation, wind, solar, gas with carbon capture on top of that, which all reduces carbon, and then distributed, energy resources. So behind the meter, batteries, solar, others as well. I predicted that in 20 years from now, we have a wind distributed solution at our home. So not rooftop solar, but something with wind at the house, and that powers up the house. That's how advanced I'm thinking about, all these technologies.
Becoming household.
Yes, small nuclear as well. So, but the role of the utility is orchestrating it. with a lot more advanced technologies, AI, data, to manage it and optimize it and save costs for the community. But ultimately, it's about the total cost of ownership, and a completely decentralized model with not an orchestrator in there is very costly for society.
No.
Are talking about energy.
I'm talking about the energy.
And the 50% energy, where is that?
It's right now. It's right now. Yes, we are at any given Sunday today we're running more than 70% renewable energy countries. Yes, but then that's on a Sunday it's 70%, but on an average basis we're running 50% now, right now.
From your last annual reports, which the one you published last is 2022, it's on your website. I read 30%.
Yeah.
Never have seen the 50%.
Because we just installed Curacao.
So please show me the data so I can see that, because I always heard about this 50% and 70%.
Of course.
Which always isn't strict, but people use the installed capacity. But if you look at
No,
energy,
no, it's really energy. We're talking about energy, and it's with Curacao. And Curacao came online end of 2024, beginning of 2025. It came online with Curacao. We're running on average 50% renewable energy penetration.
I hope to see that in your reports.
Well, the annual report of 2024 will come out. I think the deadline is on April 15th. So probably when it's published, you'll see it. But that's 2024, and we didn't have Curacao yet in 2024. I'm talking about right now.
But please, the one of 2023, because I look for
2023 is 30%.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's right now a lot of off-grid installation taking place that RAC doesn't know about it. Is Aqualabra open for make some installation that capacity that you use, for example, during the day, that you will pay the fixed fee. For example, 6 kilowatt that you pay 2 kilowatt with the small scale policy, and you allow 4 kilowatt that you use to fill the battery. Then you incentivize people to, if you do it with battery, but then it's say the 4 kilowatt that I'm filling in a battery to use at night. Should I pay for the fixed fee, or policy-wise cannot? With this Aqualabra open and it says, okay.
There are changes to the PV solar systems coming up. We're working together with RSA as well to make those changes. The capacity charge that is being paid right now is for the backup. Aqualabra stands as backup for you, so it's for the backup that Aqualabra is there. And like we said, like I just showed, it's way below the market.
No,
so
I'm not discussing the fix. It's okay. But the fix came in 2015.
Right.
At that time,
everybody invested already.
But you're not talking about no. I don't have a problem with that. Because at that time, storage was not a high.
Yeah.
It was just what you feed it, what you're using solar, rather than
Feed it
and then you pull from Aqualabra. It was justified to do the fixed fee. My point is right now that the price of battery is going down, is if I use 2 kilowatt during the day, is that you have this the fixed fee is backing up. What I'm feeling for my battery is that they be used at night. That capacity, that 4 kilowatt, can there be an exception that you can say, okay, pay 2 kilowatt because that is what your fridge and a couple of appliances that work during the day the backup is for. With your have your storage that's the backup for the night. Is that 4 kilowatt?
So what happens when you cancel your backup during the night? And Aqualabra runs for you and you don't pay for it, and my area that couldn't purchase the battery and the solar panels will pay for you for it. Is that fair?
Let me put it this way.
I think this is
That's one
a good discussion for outside. I want to take one last question. If someone has a burning question that he needs to get off his or her chest.
Yes, it's a burning question because I like the last presentation. Because the cloud solution where you were talking about the systems thinking basically. Yep. Exactly the same what happened. What I'm missing in the story is how in the telecom industry the regulatory evaluation has to be enlarged, enforced, become better Then they moved from standards to standardizing the technology instead of standardizing the solutions. In the energy sector, there is no need to repeat the whole fear of the monopolies that they're going to lose their business. Because you, based on the experience of the telecom business, you know already that it's going to be only better for you. So what is the hold up?
It's going to be different.
No, it's going to be better for the energy monopoly, because it's going to be the energy company will stay as the only one providing, with collaboration of different EVs and people at home. My question is, what would be the reason that we don't navigate in that direction structurally instead of waiting? And I'm missing the part of the RAC.
The only reason is because there's no policy and regulation in place that supports this, or if you have an energy provider that doesn't want to go down that path. But I think most energy providers see now the opportunity they have. In this energy cloud model, by the way, there's so much value to be unlocked in peak shaving and avoided cost of, because if I reduce peak by orchestrating the cloud better, I save so much investment money from what they have to make as well. So there's a lot of value to be unlocked for for the customers in that model, and that's tremendous. So this is not about putting more renewables on the grid. Will happen anyway, but having a system that can actually manage and optimize demand, supply, ancillary services, use EVs, and there's so much money to my $30 a month. I mean, how many people here in Curaçao pay more than 50 euros a month on gasoline? Those are the examples that are there.
50 euros to fill up the tank.
Right, yeah. If I fill up my tank, it's 150 euros.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, speakers, thank you very much. I think it was very Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. Also for the more than 50 people who are still there. You have perseverance. You will get at least one cheese ball. Please take the cheese balls because they are very expensive. Have a great day. Thank you very much.